In 1958, at the long-gone Katz drugstore in downtown Oklahoma City, a successful sit-in by young people led to the desegregation of restaurants in our capital city. Now, Ayanna Najuma, who was one of the children in those sit-ins, is sharing lessons learned from that era, and she's looking to the future. It's a new event called What Lies Between Us. It's going to take place September 11th at Full Circle Bookstore in Oklahoma City. Next, learn all about the past and the future in this episode of Mitchell Talks. You're listening to the new media. You're listening to Mitchell Talks. Learn more at MitchellTalks.com and follow me, Scott Mitchell, on Twitter at MitchellTalks. Hello again. How are you?
Good afternoon, Scott.
Okay, when we last talked, we did a hot seat just before the anniversary of the Katz sit-in. Now we're talking about an entirely different issue that happened September 11th. This is a unique learning situation. Tell us all about it, Ayanna.
On September 11th, I'm launching What Lies Between Us with Ayanna Najuma. What Lies Between Us is a conversational platform that will be all about social justice. I suppose, growing up in the sit-in movement back in 1958, it gave me the foundation for wanting to be able to empower people to take action. And now that I'm an adult and the list of issues around social justice are so long, I decided it was best to not only talk about issues that are of importance, but also educate people around issues. So What Lies Between Us will be a opportunity for people to read books around social justice, come in every Tuesday starting September 11th, and discuss those books along with providing their own ideas about the direction of social justice in America.
For people who might be listening to this for the first time, can you take us through a quick synopsis of your life story so people will know why that you're headlining this event?
I'm an Oklahoma girl, born in 1950, telling my age. And in 1958, I was one of the original sit-inners. I was 7 years old, went down to Katz drugstore and asked to be served. On the third day, we were given the go-ahead to receive the hamburger and the Coke that we had been so patiently and kindly requesting. Over the years, I've been involved in all type of social justice issues related to not only race, but women's issues, working with young people to empower them to take action. And now I find myself being an elder, one baby boomer who is looking at what's happening in society and trying to figure out what I can do to not only empower others, but to have them take action to make society better. So I came up with the idea of What Lies Between Us with Ayanna Najuma as the title. And you're wondering, well, what lies between us? Well, what lies between us is the desire to create equity and equality, desire to have freedom for all in America. And someone asked me the question, is it just America? But it's the world, because the issues that we're experiencing in this country are very similar issues that people are experiencing around the world. So what lies between us is that desire to make the world better.
So this was aimed at what age group?
Interestingly enough, I was at Full Circle Books, which is where the September 11th event is going to be hosted at 6:30. I met a young person who was 13. She was there in the bookstore with her mom, and I asked her, was she a reader? And she said, oh, that's my favorite thing to do. And so I convinced her, to have her mom to get her the book to be able to come back on September 11th to discuss the book. Initially, the idea was for adults, but what I'm finding out is, and it's not very difficult to figure out, is that young people are so smart in today's world that to have a conversation with them about their own ideas and their own thoughts about these social justice issues is a good opportunity to invite them to come and be a part of the conversation.
What has happened good since you were a young child at that deli counter, drugstore counter in 1958 that you'll be relaying to people in this course?
Well, it's really not a course. it really is just a conversation, an opportunity for people to read books, to discuss the books, and then hopefully at the end of the day, relationships will be developed, coalitions will be developed, people will find continuity of thought and be able to go out and do something that's important. But for me, looking back at the time I was 7 years old, growing up in the sit-in movement and all the things that have happened, one of the greatest opportunities me being able to have this conversation. 7 years old, you found a lot of segregation, a lot of racism, and racism still is alive and well in this country, which is one of the reasons we're having this conversation at Full Circle. But to be able to knock down the walls of injustice, for people to come together and develop coalitions to make the world better, are things that started back when I was a child but have continued to evolve and develop now that I'm an elder and an adult. So there's a lot of success, a lot of progress, but the fact that we're having this conversation about social justice means that racism is still alive. People from the LGBT community are still experiencing injustices. Women are not treated fairly, and so we've got the sexual harassment issues. Children are being abused at large numbers. When I think about what's happening with the foster children and how many children need homes, so the list goes on and on. I was just at an affordable housing conference and talking about people not being able to keep a roof over their head, and we talk about children who can't even have a meal. I just left a church a minute ago, and they're preparing a after-school snack program for children. The list is long, and I really want to see, my real goal is to try to put a stop to some of these issues. When we spoke before, you asked me, what do we need to do? I don't want this to be a part of a conversation 20 years from now when I may not even be around, but someone will be around, and I don't want it to be a part of their dialogue.
Who's not listening to the conversation right now that should be?
There are people in society that are thinking it's someone else's responsibility. There's a long list of folks, whether you're working class people or extremely wealthy people who don't have to worry about anything, that are driving Mercedes, or people that are taking the bus, who are not listening to this conversation because they feel as though it's not their responsibility. They've lost hope in terms of making change. There are people that develop some interest in the subject matter but are being guided in the wrong direction. So those are the people that are not listening to this conversation and don't feel like they should be a part of the conversation. What I want to do is invite them into the conversation. Everyone's voice is valuable. Everyone's voice is important. And this is a learning experience. It may not be a course, but it's an opportunity. It's an aha moment for learning. My mother, when I was a child, she was very big on education, and she said there are two things that are very important, and one is reading. And so to invite people into Full Circle to read our first book, which is The Black and the Blue by Matt Horace and Ron Harris, talking about racism and injustice in the law enforcement arena, is important because each one of us has to look at the community that we find ourselves residing in and having to follow the laws of the land. But also we know that there are things that are happening in the law enforcement space that are not quite kosher, as they would say. So we're launching the conversation with that particular book.
Who are you especially targeting as groups or people that should come to this?
Any and everybody. Any and everybody, whether you are, or whether you're a nonprofit that deals with social justice issues, and like I said, the list goes on from child abuse to foster children to housing to the environment. They're all a long list of topics, but also people from churches, university people. We were hoping to have a conversation with one of the universities, and we're inviting the students to come out and be a part of the conversation, and hoping that the professors will make this book, The Black and the Blue, a part of their learning experience, for them to be able to step outside the normal academic environment and read books that are not a part of the textbook. And so those are the people that are invited. We'd love for older people to be able to come. We realize that sometimes the time frame may find it not the best for them. But if they're able to contact Full Circle, I'm sure that if you're interested in coming, we'll figure out a way for you to get there. We wanted to make it an open arms, open invitation for anybody that wants to not only learn but also contribute.
Before we get to the details about where and when, you just finished with other activists, other sit-inners is the word, the 60th anniversary of that sit-in down at Katz. I think maybe at some point there maybe somebody's raising some money to actually put a marker there. It's an empty lot right now. But if you could go back and talk to 7-year-old Ayanna and tell her what she needed to do in a lifetime to bring about social justice, what would you say to her?
You know, it's funny when you ask that question, because I was brought up in a family where we sat around the dinner table and talked about equity and equality. I knew about the colored and the white signs. I knew about the filthy bathrooms that African Americans had to use and how clean and pristine the white bathrooms were. I knew about going around to the back to order food and not be able to go in and sit down and have a lovely meal with a linen tablecloth on it and crystal and china. So all those are things that I knew. And it's funny because I'm so fortunate to have had parents that understood the importance of my voice being heard and how valuable it was that I understood the definition of equality and equity. So there's not much that I could have told that 7-year-old Ayanna. I think even as it relates to team building, leadership skills, things that we learned in the NAACP Youth Council, those were things that the average kid was not learning or doing. I got to travel when I was a child to NAACP Youth Council conventions all over the country and meet children from other parts of the country that normally I would not get to do. So I was pretty privileged in terms of opportunity being right at my fingertips in terms of my own growth and development. I also learned how to write and give public speaking as a young child. So the young Ayanna was pretty good. The older Ayanna, she's having to convince some of her friends that now that you're retired, and all that I hear about is the grandchildren. I said, well, bring the grandkids with you because they need to get some of the same opportunities, the same knowledge that I got when I was a kid. But the direction of children is pretty broad now. I mean, I'm excited about another project. I have a voice now where I'm teaching kids and about equity and equality and them, how important their voice is. So just continue to grow as a person, continuing to read, continuing to have conversations with people around the country about their thoughts. Because needless to say, people here in Oklahoma think very differently than people in other parts of the country. I lived on the East Coast for many, many years in my adult life and found that dialogue to be different. One of the reasons I wanted to create What Lies Between Us is because I did want people to start coloring outside the line. I wanted people to be able to start seeing the world a little bit different than it was. And typically around here, you'll hear people, this is the Oklahoma way. Well, the Oklahoma way is going to have to expand itself in terms of its definition, because if you're going to compete in the global marketplace, you're going to have to be intelligent. You're going to have to be able to be articulate. You're going to have to be well-traveled and well-spoken. And that's what this whole process is about.
This is September 11th at Full Circle. What do people need to do? What do they need to know about what time and what they've got to do to be able to be there and participate?
This is a free event. What Lies Between Us with Ayanna Najuma is a conversational platform about social justice. It will start at 6:30 on September 11th at Full Circle Books, which is at 1900 Northwest Expressway at the 50 Penn Place building. It would be great if you went over to Full Circle and bought the book so you can come to the session and be able to talk intelligently about what you've read. It's not just a conversation on what you're thinking, but the book has been well researched, and the authors are going to be available on September 11th. That is a Tuesday. And every other Tuesday, not every Tuesday, but every other Tuesday, we'll be reading a different book, and the books will be announced. I'll be putting out a list in the next couple of days of the next couple of months that will take us up almost to Christmas on what we're going to be reading. As a matter of fact, if you've got some books that you think that we need to be reading, I read a lot about social justice, but needless to say, I'm not a librarian. And if you're on top of your reading and you're staying on top of what's happening in the world, you probably have become privy to literature that I may not even be familiar with. So, September 11th, 6:30, Full Circle Books, 1900 Northwest Expressway, which is in the 50 Penn Place building, which is right next door to the Olive Garden, across the street from Penn Square Mall. So you can't miss it. But we're looking forward to seeing you. Bring your children. Come prepared. Go get the book at Full Circle. Full Circle. Full Circle. I want you to go over and get it at Full Circle because they're looking forward to you coming over there and picking it up and being able to talk about it intelligently.
If you haven't seen Ayanna and me, is that correct? Me, on our hot seat that we did about 3 weeks ago, you can go to news9.com/yourvotecounts, where I archive all of Your Vote Counts on the hot seat episodes. Her story is great. This is not one and done. We're going to be talking more about things that she's doing. And she's an icon. She's an Oklahoma hero for what happened 60 years ago. Plus, she's just a great person. So,
thank you.
I know you're traveling a lot. We look forward to seeing you September 11 at Full Circle. That's Full Circle.
Full Circle Books, 6:30, September 11th. The book is The Black and the Blue by Matt Horace and Ron Harris.
Ayanna Najuma, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. Look forward to seeing you on September 11th.
You're listening to the new media, the Mitchell Talks Network. Learn more at MitchellTalks.com and follow me, Scott Mitchell, on Twitter at MitchellTalks.